The wind howled like a wounded animal, slicing through the skeletal trees that lined the abandoned railroad tracks. Scout, a German shepherd mix with fur matted by mud and snow, dragged his left hind leg as he navigated the frozen terrain. His ribs pressed against his patchy coat, each breath sending a sharp pang through his chest. 2 days since his last meal. The memory of rancid meat, scraps from a gas station dumpster, made his empty stomach churn. He paused beneath a flickering street lamp, its orange glow casting long shadows across the icy pavement. The town of Pine Hollow lay ahead, a cluster of weathered buildings huddled against the relentless winter. Scout's ears twitched at distant sounds, the clang of a distant plow, the muffled laughter of a late-night bar crowd. Danger lurked everywhere. A sudden gust sent a plastic bag skittering across the road, and Scout flattened himself against a brick wall, his heart pounding. Not again. The last time he'd let his guard down, a man in a leather jacket had kicked him so hard he'd vomited bile for hours. Survival meant trusting no one. Yet instinct drove him forward. The scent of grease and burnt coffee drifted from a convenience store ahead, its neon open sign buzzing like a trapped fly. Scout's nostrils flared. Food. He crept closer, his paws leaving faint imprints in the snow. Through the fogged window, he saw shelves stocked with cans and a rotisserie oven glowing red. Inside, Ben Carter rubbed his arthritic hands over a space heater. At 68, retirement had left him adrift, a widower with no children, running a fading store in a dying town. His eyes drifted to the security monitor, where a grainy image of a dog flickered near the dumpster. Another stray, he muttered, watching the creature's gaunt frame shudder in the cold. But something about the dog's posture struck him. Head high, ears alert despite exhaustion. Like Sarah, he thought, recalling his late wife's stubborn resilience during her illness. Ben pulled on his frayed peacoat and grabbed a leftover chicken leg from the deli counter. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped into the night. Scout froze, every muscle taut. The man stood 10 feet away, backlit by the store's fluorescent lights. His scent carried hints of cedar soap and loneliness. No alcohol, no aggression. "Easy now," Ben murmured, crouching slowly. He placed the chicken on the ground and retreated, leaning against the brick wall. Scout's survival instincts warred with desperation. Hunger won. He inched forward, eyes locked on the man, ready to bolt at the slightest twitch. The chicken tasted like salvation, its warmth spreading through his frozen body. Ben watched his breath visible in the cold. "You've seen some battles, haven't you, boy?" he said softly, noting the scar along Scout's muzzle. A car backfired 3 blocks away, and Scout vanished into the shadows like smoke. Back inside, Ben couldn't shake the image of those haunted amber eyes. He spent the night researching animal shelters online, but Pine Hollow's lone facility had closed years ago. At dawn, he dragged an old dog bed and a bowl of kibble to the alley. Scout returned the next night, and the next. By the 4th night, a fragile routine emerged. Ben began timing his deli deliveries to coincide with Scout's visits, accidentally dropping extra sausages near the dumpster. He noticed the dog's limp worsening in the cold and smuggled a bottle of glucosamine supplements from the pharmacy aisle. Chronic hip dysplasia, the vet's website had said. Ben crushed a pill into a meatball and held his breath as Scout sniffed it suspiciously. "Would have made a hell of a guard dog in another life," he remarked to Mrs. Kowalski, his only regular customer, as she bought her weekly lottery tickets. "Or a hell of a liability," she retorted, eyeing the security camera footage of Scout growling at a stray cat. But Ben saw what others didn't, the way Scout herded lost toddlers back to their parents at the park, or how he'd once stood between a homeless teen and a snarling raccoon. This wasn't just a stray. This was a creature with a moral code. One frozen February morning, Ben found Scout curled beneath the store's propane tank, a fresh gash on his shoulder. Blood stained the snow in rust-colored arcs. "Damn coyote traps," Ben hissed, recalling rumors of poachers near the woods. He breached the unspoken boundary between them, draping his coat over the trembling dog. Scout's growl vibrated against Ben's chest. but he didn't bite. "All right, soldier," Ben whispered, lifting him into the store's stockroom. "Let's get you patched up." The stockroom's fluorescent light hummed like a trapped hornet as Ben cleaned Scout's wound with trembling hands. The dog lay on a bed of flattened cardboard boxes, his breathing shallow but steady. Ben's late wife Sarah had always been the healer, stitching up neighborhood kids' scrapes, nursing orphaned baby raccoons. Now faced with this trembling animal, Ben felt the weight of her absence like a phantom limb. "Easy now," he murmured, dabbing antiseptic on the gash. Scout's lips curled back, revealing teeth yellowed but still sharp. I know. Betrayal's cheaper than kindness where you're from." A memory flickered. Sarah's laughter as she bandaged a sparrow's broken wing at their kitchen table. "You're all heart, Benji," she'd said, using the nickname he'd hated from everyone but her. "But hearts need calluses in this world." Scout flinched as the needle pierced his skin. Ben froze. "You and me both, buddy," he whispered, rolling up his sleeve to reveal the jagged scar from his factory accident. The one that had cost him his job, his confidence, and nearly his marriage. Over the next week, a fragile routine emerged. Ben converted the stockroom into a makeshift infirmary, lining the floor with horse stall mats from Tractor Supply. He discovered Scout's quirks. The way he circled 3 times before lying down, his hatred of citrus smells, the low whine he emitted when the church bells rang at noon. PTSD in dogs manifests as hypervigilance and avoidance behaviors, Ben read aloud from a veterinary blog, adjusting his reading glasses. He'd started leaving the computer on overnight, tabs open to canine trauma recovery and DIY physical therapy. Their bond deepened through silent rituals. Every dawn, Ben warmed a sock filled with rice in the microwave, Sarah's old remedy for his arthritis, and pressed it against Scout's arthritic hip. The dog tolerated it with a martyred sigh, his eyes following Ben's movements like a skeptical nurse. The town noticed. "Turning into the dog whisperer, are we?" sneered Roy, the postmaster, when Ben ordered a bulk shipment of hypoallergenic kibble. "Better than whispering to bottles of Jim Beam," Ben shot back, startling himself. Sarah had always tempered his sharp tongue. Now, with Scout sleeping at his feet during night shifts, he found courage in the dog's quiet presence. One icy March morning, the trust fractured. Ben reached to adjust Scout's bandage without warning. The dog's teeth sank into his forearm, not deep enough to draw blood, but enough to leave crescent bruises. "Damn it!" Ben stumbled back, clutching his arm. Scout cowered in the corner, trembling. It took 3 hours and a thawed salmon fillet, purchased at extortionate prices from the 24-hour gas station, to coax him out. That night, Ben sat on the stockroom floor, back against the cooler, eating microwave lasagna straight from the tray. "Used to think I was saving you," he said, tossing Scout a meatball. "Turns out we're both just practicing." The first time Derek Marsh stepped into Ben's store, the bell above the door didn't jingle. It screamed. Scout exploded from his bed in the stockroom, a guttural snarl ripping through his throat. Ben dropped his pricing gun, ink cartridge bursting across a stack of soup cans. "Easy now," Derek drawled, his oil-stained Carhartt jacket reeking of motor oil and menthols. "Just here for a pack of Reds." Ben moved instinctively between the man and the stockroom door. "We don't sell to strangers after dark." Derek's laugh revealed a missing incisor. "Heard you've been feeding my dog." The words hit like a sucker punch. Ben's mind raced. The microchip records Claire had warned him about. The shadowy figure who'd been vandalizing the store's dumpster. "Your dog." Ben's voice stayed steady, a skill honed during Sarah's chemo nights. "Don't see any collar." Derek leaned across the counter, his breath sour. "Collar's right here." He tapped his temple. "That mutt knows who owns him." In the stockroom, Scout's claws scrabbled against concrete. A low, continuous growl vibrated through the walls, a sound Ben had never heard from him, primal and shattered. The confrontation ended with Derek spitting on the floor and promising, "This ain't over." But the real damage came later. That night, Scout refused his dinner. He paced the stockroom like a caged tiger, flinching at every car horn. When Ben reached to refill the water bowl, the dog urinated in terror, a hot, shameful puddle that made Ben's throat tighten. "All right," Ben whispered, grabbing his grandfather's old deer hunting rifle from the storage closet. He slept upright in a lawn chair that night, the gun across his knees, Scout pressed against his shins. Claire Yang arrived in a cloud of Chanel No. 5 and legal briefs. At 32, the city-bred attorney wore her ambition like armor, her stilettos clicking against the store's linoleum as she appraised Scout. "Jurisprudence favors documented caregivers in animal custody cases," she said, scrolling through photos of Scout's injuries. "But we need more than healed wounds. We need a narrative." Ben stirred powdered creamer into bitter coffee. "He's not a narrative. He's a living thing." Claire's manicured nail tapped Derek's arrest record, a rap sheet longer than the store's deli menu. "This man once beat a schnauzer to death with a tire iron. You think the court cares about your folksy bond?" The hearing date loomed like a tumor. Ben stopped sleeping. He compiled evidence with manic precision. Time-stamped videos of Scout's nightmares. Receipts for $1,200 in vet bills. A notarized letter from Mrs. Kowalski attesting to the dog's upstanding character. Meanwhile, Scout regressed. He snapped at a Girl Scout selling cookies, destroyed the stockroom's drywall, and began obsessively licking a paw until it bled. "Stress-induced dermatitis," said the emergency vet, charging $400 Ben didn't have. "You might consider rehoming?" The night before the hearing, Ben found Scout digging frantically at the stockroom's concrete floor, claws broken and bleeding. "Stop it!" Ben grabbed his collar, then froze. The dog's eyes were glazed, unseeing, transported back to whatever hell Derek had kept him in. Ben sank to the floor, pulling Scout into his lap. "I'm here," he whispered as the dog thrashed. "I'm right here." They stayed that way until dawn, Ben's back pressed against the cold wall, Scout's heartbeat gradually syncing with his own. The morning after the custody hearing, Pine Hollow awoke to a spectacle. Overnight, someone had spray-painted "Mutt Lover" across Ben's storefront in neon orange. Scout sniffed the vandalism, his tail tucked tight, while Ben scrubbed at the letters with a wire brush. The chemical tang of graffiti remover mixed with the metallic bite of February air. "Leave it," said a voice behind him. Liam, the 17-year-old runaway Derek had enslaved in his dogfighting ring, stood shivering in a threadbare hoodie. His left eye was swollen shut. "Gives the place character." Ben tossed him a pair of gloves. "You here to work or philosophize?" The boy's hands trembled as he accepted the brush. They worked in silence until the noon church bells rang, their rhythm syncopated by Scout's anxious panting. "He's got to tell," Liam said suddenly, nodding at the dog. "When he's scared, his right ear folds backward, like a secret flag." Ben studied the boy, the way he avoided eye contact but leaned into Scout's warmth. "You're good with him." "Had to be." Liam's voice turned to gravel. "Derek made us train the bait dogs. Said if we got attached, he'd—" A snowplow rumbled past, drowning his words. Ben didn't press. That afternoon, the sanctuary took shape. Mrs. Kowalski donated her late husband's tool shed. Good riddance to his Playboy collection. While the Lutheran Church youth group repurposed pallets into kennels. Even Roy, the cantankerous postmaster, contributed a faded, "Please leash your pets" sign. "Rebranding," Claire declared during her next visit, tapping her iPad. "Scout Sanctuary needs social media presence. #underdog uprising." Ben balked. "We're a shelter, not a TikTok trend." But when Liam posted a video of Scout gently herding terrified rescue puppies, the donations started pouring in. $5,000 from a college student in Omaha, $500 from an anonymous CEO, a truckload of blankets from a quilting circle in Vermont. The transformation wasn't seamless. At a town council meeting, Derek's cousin, Councilman Marsh, slammed his fist on the podium. "This so-called sanctuary is a magnet for vagrants and diseased animals." Ben stood, Scout's head pressed against his thigh. "Funny, I've seen more compassion in stray dogs than in some humans." The room erupted, retirees cheering, farmers nodding, teenagers live streaming. That night, someone left a dead rat on the sanctuary's doorstep. Scout buried it beneath the old oak tree, digging with military precision. "Graves should be marked," Liam whispered, placing a dandelion on the freshly turned earth. Derek struck on the spring equinox, when the thawing earth smelled of decay and renewal. Ben was inventorying flea medication when Scout's ears snapped forward. A shadow passed the boarded-up window. Then another. "Liam!" Ben barked. "Storm cellar! Now!" The boy froze, a bag of kibble spilling across the floor. "But go!" Tires screeched outside. Scout positioned himself between Ben and the door, his growl a seismic rumble. The first Molotov cocktail shattered through the deli counter, flames licking at the snack cakes. Ben's military training kicked in, 20 years dormant but intact. He yanked the fire extinguisher from the wall, foam arcing through smoke. "Stay!" he ordered Scout, but the dog lunged at a ski-masked figure wielding a crowbar. Chaos unfolded in vignettes. Scout's teeth closing around a wrist, the crack of bone. Liam emerging from hiding with a shovel. The stench of burning fur as a flame caught Scout's tail. When the sirens wailed, the attackers fled, all but one. Derek lay pinned beneath Scout's 90-pound frame, the dog's muzzle flecked with blood and foam. "Call him off!" Derek screamed. Ben knelt, eye level with his nemesis. "He's not mine to command." Scout's breath hitched. For 3 heartbeats, the world hung suspended. Then the dog stepped back, collapsing into Ben's arms as police swarmed the building. The aftermath played out in slow motion. Paramedics wrapping Liam's burned hands. Claire arriving in pajamas, already drafting lawsuits. Scout vomiting smoke residue into Mrs. Kowalski's rose bushes. At dawn, Ben sat on the sanctuary's singed porch, Scout's head in his lap. The dog's right ear was folded back. "Me too, buddy," Ben murmured. "Me too." 5 years later, the sanctuary's fields buzzed with life. Therapy goats nibbled at visitors' shoelaces, while a 3-legged pit bull named Tank held court over the puppy enclosure. Liam, now a veterinary student, adjusted his white coat as he examined a rescued greyhound. "Congestive heart failure," he diagnosed, his once trembling hand steady, "but treatable." Ben leaned against the barn door, Scout's muzzle gone snowy with age. "Since when did you become Dr. Doolittle?" "Since you turned me into a sucker for lost causes." The banter was interrupted by a commotion at the gate. A woman in a power suit marched toward them, trailed by camera crews. "Mayor Alvarez," Ben groaned. "Here to cut another ribbon?" But the mayor knelt before Scout, ignoring her designer slacks in the mud. "This," she told the cameras, "is the reason Pine Hollow passed the Scout Act, the toughest anti-animal cruelty law in the state." The ceremony blurred for Ben. Speeches, handshakes, a bronze statue of Scout that looked nothing like him. What stuck was the email from Claire that night. Derek Marsh died in prison. Guards found him curled in a corner, muttering about the dog with hellfire eyes. At midnight, Ben walked the sanctuary's perimeter, Scout limping beside him. They paused at Sarah's memorial garden, now overgrown with wildflowers that attracted monarch butterflies. "She'd have loved this mess," Ben said, scratching Scout's favorite spot behind his ears. The dog responded with a contented sigh, his gaze tracking a barn owl's flight. Inside the farmhouse, Liam slept on the couch, an open textbook on his chest. On the wall above him hung Scout's original collar, rusted, blood-stained, displayed like a war medal. Ben clicked off the lights. Somewhere in the fields, a rescued husky howled at the moon. Scout answered with a soft woof, his tail thumping rhythmically against the floorboards. The scars remained, on bodies, on land, on souls. But in this sliver of the world, they'd built something that barked louder than fear. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales like this. Until next time, take care.